My kids knew about my wife's affairs, which hurt me more than my wife cheating on me. I never thought I'd be one of those people who would post their life's biggest drama on Reddit, but here I am. I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 15 years. We have two kids, Sophie, 13, and Ben, 11, who are the light of my life. Up until recently, I thought we had a pretty good life. A decent house, stable jobs, and two amazing kids. I thought we were happy. I tried to summarize my story into parts so it would be easier to follow. Part 1. The calm before the storm. Looking back, there were signs that something was wrong, but I ignored them, chalking them up to the normal ebbs and flows of a long-term marriage. Emily had been distant for a while. She seemed distracted, more irritable, and less interested in spending time together. I noticed she started taking more care with her appearance when she went out, even just to the grocery store. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off, saying she just wanted to feel good about herself. I didn't push it. I figured she was going through a phase. Our intimacy had dwindled over the past year. At first, I thought it was because we were both busy with work and the kids, but it became more and more apparent that she was avoiding me. I tried talking to her about it several times, but every time, she'd shut down or get defensive, claiming she was just tired or stressed. It hurt, but I didn't want to pressure her. I believed in giving her space, thinking she would come back around when she was ready. Things really started to shift about 6 months ago. Emily began spending a lot more time out of the house. She'd tell me she was meeting up with friends, going to work functions, or taking on extra shifts. At first, it seemed reasonable, but then the frequency of these outings started to bother me. She was always out when I got home from work, and it started to feel like she was intentionally avoiding me. I confided in my best friend, Mark, who's known both Emily and me since college. He suggested I keep an eye on things, but not jump to conclusions. He told me that marriage can go through rough patches, and that maybe Emily was just overwhelmed with everything. I took his advice and tried to be supportive, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Our kids, Sophie and Ben, seemed to notice the tension too. They'd ask me why mom wasn't home for dinner, or why she was always working late. I didn't want to worry them, so I made up excuses, telling them she was just really busy with work. It wasn't entirely a lie. Emily had taken on some new responsibilities at her job, but I knew deep down that something else was going on. I should have paid more attention to the signs. I should have trusted my instincts. But I loved Emily, and I didn't want to believe that she could ever do something to hurt our family. Part 2. The discovery. Everything came crashing down on a seemingly normal Saturday afternoon. The kids were out with friends, and Emily had gone out shopping, or so she said. I was cleaning up around the house, trying to keep myself busy, when I found something that made my heart stop. I was tidying up our bedroom, and as I was about to put Emily's phone on her nightstand, a notification popped up. It was a text message from someone named Jay. I wasn't in the habit of snooping through her phone, but something about that message caught my attention. It read, "Can't wait to see you again, babe. Last night was amazing. I'll be thinking of you all day." My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I opened the message thread. There were dozens of texts between Emily and this Jay. Some explicit, some flirtatious, all clearly pointing to the fact that my wife was having an affair. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was cheating on me. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at the screen, trying to process what I'd found. My initial shock gave way to a burning anger. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but she wasn't home. I felt sick to my stomach, imagining what she was really doing during all those late nights at work. Eventually, I forced myself to put the phone down. I couldn't let my kids see me like this. I needed to hold it together until I could figure out what to do next. But first, I needed more information. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. I started digging. I checked her social media, her emails, and every app on her phone that I could think of. The more I found, the worse it got. There were photos, videos, and even love letters. It was clear that this wasn't just a fling. Emily had been involved with this guy for at least a year. They had met up in hotels, had romantic dinners, and even gone on trips together while I thought she was on business trips. The final blow came when I found a folder on her phone labeled Family. Inside were pictures of our kids, Sophie and Ben, at various school events, birthday parties, and family outings. Mixed in with these were messages from Jay commenting on how cute our kids were and how perfect their little family was. It was like a punch to the gut. Not only had Emily betrayed me, but she had also exposed our children to this stranger. Part 3. The confrontation. I knew I had to confront Emily, but I wanted to do it in a way that would give me the answers I needed. I couldn't just go in guns blazing and risk her shutting down or lying to me. I needed to know everything, the full extent of her betrayal. That night, I pretended everything was normal. When Emily came home, I asked her how her day was, and she gave me the usual story about shopping and meeting up with a friend for coffee. I nodded, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside, I was seething. After the kids went to bed, I told her we needed to talk. She looked surprised but agreed. We sat down in the living room, and I took a deep breath before asking her outright, "Is there something you need to tell me, Emily?" She looked confused, even a little scared, and shook her head. "No, why? What's going on?" I pulled out her phone and showed her the messages I had found. "Who is Jay?" I asked, my voice trembling with barely controlled anger. Her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights, and I felt a sick sense of satisfaction seeing her squirm. Who is he, Emily? I demanded, louder this time. She finally managed to speak. Chris, I'm sorry. It's not what you think. I never wanted to hurt you. Not what I think? I snapped. You've been cheating on me for a year, Emily. You've been lying to me, to our kids. You've been letting this guy into our lives, into our family, and you're telling me it's not what I think. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to explain. I met him at work. We started talking, and it just happened. I didn't plan for this. I swear. I didn't want to hurt you or the kids. I don't know what I was thinking. Clearly, you weren't thinking about us at all, I said, my voice cold. How could you do this, Emily? How could you let this go on for so long? And how could you involve our children? She sobbed, burying her face in her hands. I'm sorry, Chris. I'm so sorry. I love you. I love our family. I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. I stared at her, feeling a mix of rage and sorrow. This was the woman I had built my life with, the mother of my children, and now she was a stranger to me. I didn't know what to do, what to say. All I could think about was how our kids would react when they found out. They already know, don't they? I asked quietly, the realization dawning on me. Emily looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. What? No, Chris, they don't know. I swear. Don't lie to me, Emily, I said, my voice trembling. They've been acting strange for weeks, asking me where you were, why you weren't home. Did you tell them about him? Did you let him meet our children? She shook her head frantically. No, Chris, I would never. I never told them. They don't know anything. I didn't believe her. I couldn't believe her. I felt like my entire world was collapsing around me. The woman I loved, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. And now I had to face the fact that my children might have been dragged into this mess. Part 4. The truth comes out. The next morning, I knew I couldn't wait any longer to talk to the kids. I needed to know if they were aware of what was going on, and if so, how much they knew. I wanted to protect them, but I also didn't want them living in a house full of lies. Emily was too distraught to do anything but sit in the bedroom and cry, so I decided to talk to Sophie and Ben alone. I found them both in the living room, watching TV, their innocent faces blissfully unaware of the storm that was brewing. Sophie, Ben, can we talk for a minute? I asked, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible. They turned to look at me, sensing the seriousness in my tone. Sophie muted the TV, and they both gave me their full attention. What's wrong, Dad? Sophie asked, her voice filled with concern. I took a deep breath and sat down across from them. I need to ask you both something, and I want you to be honest with me, okay? They nodded, their eyes wide with curiosity and a bit of fear. Have either of you noticed anything strange about your mom lately? Has she talked to you about anything that might be bothering her? Sophie and Ben exchanged a glance, and my heart sank. They knew something. Sophie hesitated, biting her lip. Dad, we didn't want to say anything because we didn't want to upset you. But we've noticed that Mom's been acting different. Ben nodded in agreement. Yeah, she's been spending a lot of time on her phone, and sometimes she goes out and doesn't come back until late. I felt a lump form in my throat. Did she ever mention anyone named Jay? Did she introduce you to anyone new? Sophie looked down at her hands, and Ben shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Dad, we saw some texts on Mom's phone a few weeks ago, Sophie admitted quietly. They were from a guy named Jay. We didn't really understand what they meant, but they sounded weird. I closed my eyes, trying to hold back the tears. My kids had known. They had known and hadn't said anything because they were trying to protect me. I'm so sorry, Dad, Sophie said, her voice trembling. We didn't know what to do. We didn't want to make things worse. It's not your fault, I said quickly, reaching out to take their hands. None of this is your fault. You should never have had to deal with this. They looked at me with tears in their eyes, and I knew I had to be strong for them. They needed me now more than ever. Your mom and I are going to figure this out, I told them, squeezing their hands. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, I love you both so much. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure you're okay. They nodded, and Sophie wiped away a tear. We love you too, Dad. Part 5. The Fallout. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Emily and I had to face the reality of what her actions had done to our family. She begged for forgiveness, swearing that she'd do anything to make things right, but I couldn't just sweep everything under the rug. The trust was broken, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. We decided to separate for a while. Emily moved in with her sister, and I stayed in the house with the kids. We agreed that it was important for Sophie and Ben to have some stability, and we didn't want to uproot their lives any more than we had to. The first few weeks were rough. The kids were confused, angry, and hurt. They didn't understand why their mom had left or why our family was falling apart. I did my best to explain things without vilifying Emily, but it was hard. I was still so angry, so betrayed, and it was difficult not to let that bleed into my conversations with them. Emily continued to reach out, begging for another chance, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was the betrayal, the lies, the hurt she had caused. I needed space to figure out what I wanted, and I needed time to heal. Mark was a huge support during this time. He was there to listen when I needed to vent, to offer advice when I was lost, and to remind me that I wasn't alone. He even helped me take care of the kids when I was struggling to hold it together. I don't know what I would have done without him. After a few months of separation, Emily and I finally sat down to have an honest conversation about our future. She was still hoping for reconciliation, but I had reached a point where I knew that wasn't going to happen. The trust was gone, and I couldn't see a way to rebuild it. I think we need to talk about divorce, I said, my voice steady but sad. Emily's face crumpled, and she started to cry. Chris, please. I know I messed up, but I love you. I love our family. I'll do anything to make this right. I know you're sorry, Emily, I said softly, but I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that things can go back to the way they were. This isn't just about what you did. It's about what it did to our family, to our kids, to me. I need to move on, and I think you do too. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I hate it, but I understand. I just want you to be happy, Chris. I want the kids to be happy. We'll figure it out, I said, trying to sound reassuring even though I felt anything but. We'll work out a custody arrangement that's best for Sophie and Ben. We'll do our best to co-parent and make sure they know they're loved. Divorce is never easy, especially when kids are involved. It was a long, painful process, but eventually, we reached an agreement. We sold the house and split the proceeds, and I moved into a smaller place not too far from the kids' school. Emily found an apartment nearby as well, and we worked out a shared custody schedule that gave the kids stability and time with both of us. Part 6. Moving forward. It's been about a year since the divorce was finalized, and I'd be lying if I said everything is perfect now. The pain of Emily's betrayal still lingers, and there are days when I miss the life we had, or at least the life I thought we had. But I'm doing my best to move forward, for myself and for my kids. Sophie and Ben are resilient. They've adapted to the changes better than I could have hoped, and they seem to be doing well. They still love their mom, and I encourage that relationship as much as I can. Emily and I may not be together anymore, but we're still co-parents, and our kids deserve the best from both of us. I've started going to therapy, which has helped me process everything that happened and figure out how to heal. It's been a long journey, but I'm starting to find peace. I'm learning to forgive, not just Emily, but myself as well. I've realized that holding on to anger and resentment only hurts me, and that I need to let go if I want to be truly happy. Emily and I have managed to build a cordial relationship as co-parents. We communicate about the kids, attend their events together, and even have the occasional family dinner for their sake. It's not easy, and there are still moments of tension, but we're both committed to making it work for Sophie and Ben. As for my love life, I'm taking things slow. I've been on a few dates, but I'm not in a rush to jump into anything serious. I'm still healing, and I want to make sure I'm in a good place before I bring someone new into my life, especially with the kids involved. Mark has been encouraging me to get back out there, but he's also respectful of the fact that I need time. He's been a rock through all of this, and I'm grateful to have him in my corner. Sometimes, I wonder what would have happened if I had confronted Emily earlier if I had noticed the signs sooner. Would it have made a difference? Would we still be together? But I've come to realize that dwelling on the past won't change anything. What matters now is the present and the future. I'm focusing on being the best father I can be, on rebuilding my life, and on finding happiness again. It's a process, and there are still tough days, but I'm getting there. Slowly but surely, I'm moving forward. So, that's my story. I never imagined my life would take this turn, but here I am. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes it throws us curveballs we never saw coming. But we keep going, keep fighting, and keep loving the people who matter most. And maybe, just maybe, things will turn out okay in the end. Update. It's been a few months since I last posted, and I thought I'd give an update on how things have been progressing since the divorce was finalized. Spoiler alert. It's been a roller coaster, and not the fun kind. As you know, after everything that happened with Emily's affair, I made the difficult decision to file for divorce. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the right one for me and for the kids. We've been trying to navigate this new normal as best we can, but just when I thought things were settling down, Emily threw a new wrench into the works. When we first separated, Emily and I had agreed on a temporary arrangement regarding custody and finances. I moved out of the house, and we sold it, splitting the proceeds. The custody arrangement allowed the kids to spend an equal amount of time with each of us, and I was covering a fair share of the kids' expenses, along with paying for their school and extracurricular activities. At the time, Emily didn't push for anything more, and I thought we were on the same page about keeping things amicable for Sophie and Ben's sake. But as the divorce proceedings moved forward, things started to change. The shift. It began subtly. Emily would bring up how hard things were for her financially now that she was living on her own. She mentioned how difficult it was to maintain the same lifestyle she had before the separation. She'd say things like, "The kids are used to a certain standard of living, and I want to make sure they don't feel any less loved or supported." At first, I thought she was just venting, and I tried to be understanding. But then she started dropping hints that she was struggling more than she had let on. She'd say, "I'm not sure how I'm going to pay for this month's rent," or "The kids need new clothes, and I just don't have the money right now." Each time, I reminded her that I was already covering most of the major expenses, and that the proceeds from the sale of the house should be helping her out. She would agree, but then the guilt trips began to get more pointed. "You know, Chris, you were always the breadwinner. I sacrificed my career to take care of the kids and support you. Now I'm left with nothing. Do you really think it's fair that I'm struggling like this?" This was hard to hear because, yes, Emily did make sacrifices for our family, and I never wanted her to feel like she was left in the lurch. But I also couldn't ignore what had led us here. Her betrayal, her choices, and the impact they had on our family. The guilt trip. As the divorce was finalized, the real fight began. Emily's lawyer reached out with demands for spousal support and a significant increase in child support beyond what we had initially agreed upon. I was floored. Emily had a job, and while it wasn't a high-paying position, it was enough to cover her basic needs. Plus, we had shared custody, so the kids were with me half the time, meaning I was already covering their expenses during that period. When I questioned why she was pushing for more, Emily didn't hold back. She said she deserved it because she had sacrificed so much during our marriage, and now she was struggling to make ends meet. She claimed that I owed her this because she had put up with my shortcomings for years, and now she was being punished for trying to find happiness. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had always tried to be fair and generous, even after everything that had happened. I had hoped we could maintain a respectful relationship, but now it felt like she was using guilt as a weapon to get what she wanted. Emily's demands were unreasonable, and I knew I had to stand my ground. But the guilt weighed heavily on me. She kept reminding me of how hard things were for her, how she was struggling to maintain the kids' lifestyle, and how she had nothing without me. It was manipulative, and it made me feel like the bad guy for not wanting to give in. The legal battle. I realized that I needed to protect myself and the future of my kids. I hired a good lawyer and laid out everything. The affair, the lies, and how Emily had tried to manipulate the situation to her advantage. My lawyer assured me that the courts would look at the facts and that I had a strong case, but that didn't make the process any less stressful. Emily was relentless. She claimed that she needed spousal support to maintain the lifestyle she was accustomed to, even though she had been the one to destroy our marriage. She argued that the kids needed to live in a stable, familiar environment, and that I should cover the costs to make that possible. What she didn't seem to understand was that I wasn't trying to take anything away from the kids. I was simply trying to ensure that things were fair. I wanted Sophie and Ben to have everything they needed, but I wasn't going to be bullied into paying more than my share because of Emily's guilt trips. The court proceedings were grueling. Emily played the victim card, painting a picture of a struggling single mother who had been wronged and left with nothing. It was infuriating to sit there and listen to her twist the narrative, making herself out to be the one who was hurt when, in reality, she was the one who had torn our family apart. But my lawyer was prepared. We presented evidence of Emily's affair, the messages, the photos, and the fact that she had lied to our children and me for over a year. We showed that I was already providing more than enough financial support, and that Emily's demands were excessive and unreasonable. In the end, the court sided with me. They recognized that while Emily was entitled to some spousal support, the amount she was asking for was far beyond what was fair or necessary. The child support was also adjusted to reflect our shared custody arrangement, ensuring that both of us contributed equally to the kids' needs. Moving on, the whole ordeal left me emotionally drained. I never wanted things to get so ugly, but I also knew I had to protect myself and my kids. The guilt trips from Emily haven't stopped entirely, but now I'm better at recognizing them for what they are: manipulative tactics to get her way. I've made peace with the fact that Emily and I will never have the amicable relationship I had once hoped for. It's sad, but I can't let her actions and her guilt trips control my life any longer. I'm focusing on moving forward, being there for Sophie and Ben, and rebuilding my life on my own terms. The kids are doing okay, all things considered. They're adjusting to the new custody arrangement and seem to be handling the changes as well as can be expected. I'm doing my best to shield them from the ongoing tension between their mother and me, and I'm making sure they know they're loved and supported no matter what. As for me, I'm continuing therapy and working on healing from all of this. I'm learning to let go of the guilt, to recognize that I did what I had to do to protect myself and my kids, and that I'm not the bad guy in this story. It's a process, but I'm getting there, one day at a time. Thanks to everyone who reached out with support and advice after my last post. Your words helped me more than you know, and I'm grateful to have this space to share my story. I'll keep you all updated as things progress, but for now, I'm focusing on moving forward and creating a better future for myself and my kids. Subscribe and like for more videos.